I just had a couple of questions. There were
Sure.
things I was very concerned about. Number one, it's going to be a native Ibrahim community. Second thing I understand, you said that we need 2,500 people.
Well, no, it varies depending upon what county you're in.
The reason why I say that, because unlike the city that I want to start, is going to be
Much smaller than that. Right?
much smaller than that. Not only that, we're going to be living more so while on the grid, but off the grid, more naturalistic, holistic type stuff.
Yes, I have all that in here. Yep.
I had questions about city council. I had said questions about police chief,
All of that.
fire chief, everything.
So when I was telling her, this was a couple of weeks ago. This was like after Sabbath service. We were talking about various other things, and then I transitioned into how do we govern our own community? How do we create it? How do we govern it? What's the process? And I went through it on the whiteboard with them. But here I'm gonna go through it, show you it in the So in the municipal incorporation, there's some okay, cool, that's no problem. There's some concepts to understand before we actually engage in having our own government system, right? The main thing is communalism. Communalism is a principle of political organization based on federated communes and allegiance to one's own ethnic group rather than to the wider society. And this is what you get with a lot of those communities that are ethnic groups that only have their people in their community with their own stores and everything like that, because they operate based on this concept right here that we don't operate based off, because we don't care who comes to our community and does whatever they want to do. That's not how other groups operate, right? But this goes into the process to let you know that they have a more invested approach to everything that you build in the community has to be for the community. It cannot benefit anybody else outside that community. So when you understand this and you entrench this as the foundation of why you're doing certain things, everything will be built around centering everything to benefiting immediately the community, right? So the federation is just a group of states with a central government but independence in their own internal affairs. The reason why I brought up federation is because if we were to create a black city, but there's various sects of people in that city that maybe don't agree on the same things, maybe belief-wise or whatever, you can still form a confederation and you can still do things that works on the common denominators that everybody, no matter what federation you're in, the common denominators that plague you in your everyday society, community that you live in currently. And what we're going to do is have an official sit on that city board that represents those various communities, so that way when we vote on things, it will be in interest to resolve the societal ills that we all face that are common amongst us. But this is only if the community you have is going to be much bigger and not an exclusive community. Exclusive community, you don't need the federation, right? Body politic is everybody in the community is responsible for day-to-day affairs and the governance of the community. And the reason why you have to have a body politic is because the moment that one person feels that their input is not influential in changing things for the better for the community, then they're not going to get involved in voting for anybody. So you want to be able to also have this tacked onto the foundation to explain to people that, listen, once we start this community, this is a body politic community. That means everybody's responsible for the governance of this community, and everybody's involvement is necessary if you want to see changes. You standing on the sideline saying, no, I'm not going to get involved, when we need everybody in the community to come on one accord to get something done. Body politic means if we're doing a vote, unless we get everybody's vote, nothing's going to happen. And you got to be able to inspire the people by giving them something that immediately benefits them, that's going to inspire them or motivate them to get involved in the voting process or any process that is in regards to the governmental setup.
Would it be manhandling to say that if you enter into our community that you have to sign a contract to get involved?
If you want to live here, you don't care if you come and shop. You take your money, that's fine. But if you want to live here,
you're gonna have to. I'm all about contracts.
Yep, me too. Yep, you got it. Yep, yep, you got it.
I'm not playing with you.
Exactly.
And as soon as you don't want to do something that you don't want to do, you breach the contract. And guess what? I got a right to give you 30 days.
You don't have to be here. So this land that we're going to appropriate is the land that's owned by the municipality, and the municipality sets all the ordinances and the statutes on how things are governed. So if a resident has to live here, and in the contract of residency that any gated community, non-gated community has to employ or has to furnish, because in Georgia, the housing laws are very liberal. They're very open, meaning that most of it is up to the discretion of whoever the landlord is. So if you own land, you can create a whole plethora of statutes on how things should be governed. And unless if it doesn't violate the person's actual rights as a citizen of the state, then everything is on the table. And if you're saying that I have an exclusive community, that if somebody wants residence here, they have to sign this contract that stipulates that, hey, living here, you're required to get involved in the operation of this society. And they sign it, you let them know up front, listen, this is how it is if you want to live here. They sign it, then that means everybody is responsible for getting involved in the political process. So that way, once you know you have everybody on board, anything that gets passed, anything that gets done is going to immediately benefit everybody because they are, by contractual agreement, involved in the voting process, not just the voting, the volunteer process. I'm going to show you that aspect in a minute.
So what about the federation? If you want me to stop you,
sure.
What if I decided that the people in the city are the people that are the owners of the city or the people of the city, but outside, which is the downtown part, when you first come in where people can solicit, I'll have apartments over top of the businesses that are people who are not a part of the community. So that is where federation will come in, because you'll still have one central government, but there'll be several factions that live in that domicile that contribute to the central government, but do not lose their sense of independence. So that means they're not forced to convert to an idea, political belief, or spiritual belief outside of their own. They still retain that. The central government does not encroach upon that. All it does is govern the common needs of everybody that's in that community. And as a federation, let's say this group has this particular belief, this group has this particular belief, and we're not all doing Torah, then you have to find a way to centralize, not the beliefs, but centralize the common needs that they all have, such as housing. Everybody needs housing. Food. Everybody needs food. Clothing. Everybody needs clothing. Roads. Everybody needs roads. There's certain things that are common to everybody. Nobody wants crime or violence. All of these are common, so each one of these federated communes are responsible for contributing to the overall central government that's going to ensure that none of these ills are in our community or our society. But if you're just doing Torah-based community where everybody already has the same numerator of belief, then you don't need a federation because we're all on the same page with it. And I'm only doing this, quite frankly, for revenue purposes.
Exactly. I'm going to show you the revenue part. That is the key factor that a lot of these communities have not reworked from the ground up. So I've created a solution from the ground up to fix any revenue issues. Show you, even when you're starting it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I brought this example. Ferguson is one example of a mostly black city that had, Mike Brown got shot. So this article, it goes in to talk about proportional representation. They did not have proportional representation because Ferguson had over 60 to 70% African Americans and maybe 30% white and others, but the city council was all white. The mayor was a white person. They're not representing the 70% or the larger majority of the community. So that means that if they're creating policy, and one of the policies for enforcement is based on statistics that generate a profile or the need for profiling, and then they implement that to say, hey, most black people, statistically speaking, are criminals. So therefore, if we're going to do an enforcement policy, it's going to be a method of profiling that we can minimize their potential to be adherents to crime in order to protect the white minority who, statistically speaking, have less crimes amongst themselves. So what typically happened was Mike Brown was profiled. And due to profiling based on statistics that's given to the legislative body, and then creates the policy that hands it down in the form of a statute or ordinance that allows them to patrol certain areas a particular way, use a certain amount of aggressive force in a particular way, that's why Mike Brown got shot. Not because he was a black man that happened to get shot, but the policy makers and the policy enforcers did not represent the greater community. So that's why when we implement a municipality, it absolves all of this because the majority of the people are the ones that are going to be majority represented. So if there's 30% white people or 70% black people, the majority of the populace is the ones that are going to be sitting on that council. If you have a white person, you may have one white person, but it's going to be based on the same way that we do House of Representatives. Every state has 2 senators. House of Representatives based on how many populace of individuals lives in that state. It's the same way on a smaller level because what you're doing is you're aggregating the powers of the state, the legislative and enforcement powers of the state and judicial powers, and you're concentrating it on a local environment. And what you're doing is out of that, you're creating local ordinances and local statutes that will directly impact that community as opposed to just general laws of the state that may or may not apply to small localized communities, right? So Mike Brown, I use this as an example. I'll go through this. I talked about this. You should be familiar with this because I went over that with Shad, and I know she was speaking about that. But the incentive is, being that there's an international decade for people of African descent, and its stated objective is to promote respect, protection, and fulfillment of human rights and fundamental freedoms for people of African descent, promote a greater knowledge and respect for diverse heritage, culture, and contribution of our people, which you don't see in a black majority community with 20% white people and all the councilmen, police officers, and mayors all white. That does not reflect this. And to adopt and strengthen national, regional, and international legal frameworks according to the Durban Declaration and Program Action on the elimination of all forms of racial discrimination to ensure their full and effective implementation. The reason why we want to create a black municipal corporation is because we want to be able to reflect what's being done on the international level for other people in the diaspora who are reaping benefits by pushing or leveraging the state or the local governments in order to adhere to these things, because the U.S. as a federated nation is already an adherent to this program, right? So what we're doing is, when we set it up, it's based on the principles of how do you empower people of African descent who are considered prisoners of war in certain languages, who are considered refugees in other languages. All of these terms refer to other smaller other groups and other nations that are being oppressed, but yet there's nothing being done for us here in America. So we want to create a municipality that can favor this, and that will also give us international acclaim and attention, so that way the international community can get involved in what we're doing on a local level in order to protect these people of African descent.
Now, what's the way that a state can actually shut this down?
We'll get into that.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll do another 6-7 minutes of this, right?
Okay, good.
So once we got this, then I break down for people to know what a township is, village government is, borough government is, because all of these a commonwealth falls in any one of these things here.
Gotcha.
Now, when you look at, because commonwealth has to do with the people's vested interest in all the affairs of the community, but the political structure is different in a town, township, village government, borough government, etc. Even something called special districts. A special district would be a fire district, a school district. These have their own governing bodies, they have their own superintendent, and they operate autonomously outside of the community that they're in. Now, in some municipalities, you have a certain conditional special district where the council or the mayor has influence on who sits on that board. But in other places, that board operates autonomously outside of the community, which means they have their own judicial branch, their own police force, and their own legislative branch. Now, we see that because you look at GSU has their own police department, they have their own governing body. Anything that happens on their grounds, they can police it. Okay. They can judge it. Okay. They can create laws and ordinances that's slightly different once you walk outside the campus. So we want to be able to set up a municipality that can influence these special districts that we set up in our communities, and there's various ones that do that, right? So the solution is creating a municipal corporation, and to put it frank, a municipal corporation is a city, town, village, or borough that has governmental powers. A municipality is a city, town, village, or in some states, a borough. A corporation is an entity, listen to this, capable of conducting business. Cities, towns, villages, and some boroughs are called municipal corporations because they have the power to conduct business with the private sector. Not only are you affecting the political aspect, but now as an incorporation, you can do business contracts with private parties, corporations, or other intergovernmental entities. Which means that we can create intellectual property that we form on our municipality, whether it be an irrigation drip system or something like that. And what we can do is we can lease it out, the technology out for use to other governments, which means that these governments have a contractual agreement and obligation in order to ensure our survival, because if anything happens to us, it's going to affect their business that they have with us. That's why we want contracts with other governments, not just domestically, but internationally. So whatever we create, they have a vested interest to make sure that we survive, because if not, they're going to lose that IP, that contract, that business. So that's a way to protect us from the state and federal government from just coming in and bogarting and doing whatever they want with us. Because now we're dealing with the international community, and we're dealing with communities in other states. Right? So police power is the power of state and local governments to enact laws governing health, safety, morals. Whoa, we talking about Torah. Morals and general public welfare. We have police power that's concentrated on a municipal level as a local government, and we're responsible for governing all these things on a local level. Right? So, moving forward, this is one example of one entity called Spicewood who got incorporated. They define a 2-mile radius to incorporate. They show proof that the radius includes more than 260 residents. They draft a petition requesting incorporation. 50 registered voters must sign a petition out of the 260 that actually live there. They file the map and petition with the county judge. The county judge certifies the map and petition. The county commissioners court approves the incorporation, and a ballot vote to incorporate is held at the next general election. So this is just a general scheme of how this process applies, but there is some slight modification depending upon what county you're in. But this is the general scheme of how that process works. All right. So the residents there and 50 registered voters. You don't need all the residents, right? You just need the people who are registered voters out of the people that live in there. So if you have a 2-mile radius, you have to have at least 260 residents, or a little bit more than that, in that 2-mile radius, and all you need is 50 of them to sign a petition. This shows you the proportion or the ratio. To sign a petition, and with that, you can create a charter, file the charter, get it approved, and once it's approved, it turns into a bill. And that bill is enforced, and that means that actual township is created. That's what they did in Stonecrest and South Fulton. A black community, 98% said, we're going to take over this community. And that's exactly what they did. Here is what I want you to read. This should be your Bible. The Georgia Model Municipal Charter. This is a guide that was created by a third party to show communities how to set up a charter for your municipality. So this right here, I'm not going to go through, but I want you to have this to read it, research it, study it. This is going to be your Bible, right? It shows you how to organize everything, how to word certain things. I mean, if you follow this template, there's no way it will get rejected, whatever you're trying to apply. The overview of municipal government structure, this is what you brought up. You have to know what a strong mayor is, a weak mayor setup, a council manager setup, and a voter setup. Let me give you an example. If you have an issue with the fire district, let's say the fire department is taking too long to respond to an incident, who do you petition in order to get that change? Well, you got to see what kind of setup you have to see who's responsible for influencing what occurs in that fire district. In a strong mayor setup, the voters elect the council, and the council appoints a city clerk and a city attorney, and the mayor appoints the police chief, the public works director, the fire chief. So he has influence with the fire chief. So that means that if this mayor, if we have a difficult time with fire department, the next time we vote a mayor in, we're going to make sure it's a mayor that has a vested interest in hiring a candidate that we want to govern the fire district, which is a special district. Also the finance director, the utilities director, and the recreation director. But now when you go to a weak mayor, the mayor appoints the fire chief, public works director, utilities director, and parks and recreation director. Utilities director, anybody that oversees water, electricity, like in Cobb County, you have Cobb County Water, Cobb County Electric, etc., right? But the city council, they're over the city clerk, the city attorney, and the auditor. So you have an issue in regards to the city attorney and how certain laws, not laws, but court cases are being governed over. You know who you have to patronize in order to get that change. If you have a council manager, the mayor and the council is all one body. And the mayor really is a pseudo-mayor. He is just the general overseer of the council. And they appoint the clerk, the city manager, and the attorney, and that's it. And these individuals, then, they're the one who appoint the utilities director, the fire chief, the police chief. So if you don't know what kind of structure you have set up, you don't know who to petition in order to get certain things in a community change. If you have an issue with the water, let's say the water quality is bad. An example with that would be Flint, Michigan. Flint. At the citizens, they don't know the structure. They have no clue. You have to deal with the public works director and a person that deals with the utilities. You got to see who influences that. Who do I need to put pressure on to influence that? So you can't put influence on the mayor when it's a city council that deals with those things. See, if you don't know what kind of structure you have, they'll let you keep bothering the city council when it's the mayor the one responsible for doing the water. So this position to switch from a main city source to a local source for water, that decision was made by a mayor who was in control of the utilities director and the public works director. He influences them. So if the people putting pressure on the city council when it's the mayor involved, you're never going to get change if you don't know the structure, right? Let's move forward. And then here I just go in more detail in this, which the charter will give you all that information when you read it. It'll give you all the details, right? This right here is the second Bible you need. Those are the two Bibles. The Handbook for Georgia Mayors and Council Members. This is Georgia Municipal Association. The layman can read this, but this is the Bible that's given to the councilmen and mayors in order to know what they can and cannot do, right? So this you can read. It informs them on how to structure their municipality, and it's very user-friendly. So this is like 11th, 12th grade accessible. It's not collegiate level wordage or verbiage that'll throw you off. It's very, you can read, anybody in high school can read this. Your son can read this and be able to get an idea about this, right? And in the municipality, these are the things that we want to teach the students. In K-12, they need to know these things. This got to be their Bible, because they're the next generation that's going to influence how things are structured when you pass, right? So I go through how to set things up. We have our own courts in the municipality, which you have. Your public safety officers is your policy enforcers for the municipality. So certain ordinances that's done here in Tucker, which is a municipality, cannot be enforced in Sandy Springs. They're two different entities, right? In two different counties. So here, you get to install your own police officers. And you get to do all of that with your municipality. Your intergovernmental contracts, which is important because you want to make contracts with other governments because they'll have a vested interest in your survival. So the state or federal government won't just come and try to impede upon anything, because other entities, private corporations, private individuals have a vested interest in your survival. Other governments have a vested interest in your survival. And this is why Black Wall Street didn't work, because we didn't control the politics and we didn't have no contracts with any entity outside of ourselves.
And
we did.
Militarized.
And militarized too, because here, look, we have our own police officers in order to protect your community, right? And not only that, you give training to the people so they know routes out and in and out of the community if something happens, and you know where to go to get the munitions at. You're training everybody in the community to know these things, and you're centralizing it to a particular police force to enforce these things and to protect the community. That's important, because Black Wall Street didn't have that. They were a black part of an overall town. They was not their own entity.
Right. It's like Little Italy or something like that.
Something like that. There you go. All right. Elections and voters' rights in the municipality. When we institute a body politic, everybody has to vote in order for something to happen. If one person don't vote, then it's a standstill. And that gives everybody the idea, say, man, you know what, my vote does count. But if it's not a body politic, then it's only the people that do vote are the ones that influence everything else. And the people who do vote can have an issue. Like, well, I'll give you an example. If we have a town that's 70% black, 30% white, and it's only the white people that's voting, who do you think the policies, the councilman and the mayor is gonna reflect?
Right.
That white populace. Then those other black people, the laws ain't go. But if it's a body politic, the black people gotta vote too. Yeah. If you don't get enough of them to vote, it's gonna be a standstill. Yeah. So that means once they understand the policy and they say, wait, it's only favoring them, I'm not voting for that. Now we change the whole landscape. Now the game changes, right?
Yeah.
Special districts, you'll see all that in the handbook. Special districts are done for like public works, utilities, fire districts, school districts. These are all special districts that they have their own boards that govern themselves, but they offer their services to the community at large, right? And these are things, if you want to have them installed in your municipality, you can. If you don't want them, there's workarounds for that, right? But this is something that you can install as optional, right? Now, I threw in here Stonecrest as an example of how this is installed in a black community. 96 to 98% black people that live in that community, they run everything now. The mayor and councilmen, they live in there. Now, their fire department and police department is in transition. So they're taking it away from the county and making it on a local level. Because that's the transition. The county enforces it until everything is set up. They just voted for their mayor in April. So everything is still transitioning, but by the end of next year, they'll have everything on their own. They don't need the county's assistance no more. And the county, the mayor, this guy who's the mayor, what's his name? It's not his name. The mayor and a group of people in the community that said, hey, we saw Sandy Springs, Tucker, Dunwoody, Brookhaven, all of them creating municipalities, but we realized that we don't have a voice, even in those communities, because we don't make up the majority.
Yeah.
They say, yo, we're going to do it ourselves. And they decided to come together. They had a town hall meeting, and this is what they decided. Here, I have the charter for Stonecrest. I see exactly how they set it up. I have the charter also for South Fulton, and I've examined it to see how they set theirs up. Gotcha. And what we're trying to do is bring these two communities as an example for other communities around Georgia to create their own municipality, but also to exceed all the other municipalities in the whole entire state. That's the objective. Now, here's another option. Land. What's the best land to get? Unimproved or raw land? Unimproved or raw land is land that has no infrastructure, no improvements, no grading, and no site development. Why is that important? It's because there you go. Yeah. My man, that's I'm sorry. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
The price. And number two, if we're looking at this, you're talking about being ecologically sound, right? Being in harmony with the land and everything like that. If you have land that's been untouched, it's going to be the most fertile land. You know why? Because nobody's interfered with anything in the land. You don't have no pipes leaking through and no electrical currents that's interfering with how the plants operate. So when you have land that's flat like that, as a municipality, you're able to get what's called conveyances of real estate, and you're able to acquire the land in that area. So whoever's the landowners, you can have a contract or agreement with them where you as a government entity, not a private individual, can use that leverage to purchase that land on your line of credit.
But you're saying that based on being incorporated already.
Well, what you're going to do is, first you got to see who owns the land. Is it the county that owns the land, private investors, the bank?
Yeah.
You find out who has that. What you do is that you purchase that land, and once that land is purchased by the people that want to live on that community, then what happens is you convey it or give it over to the municipality.
Right.
And the municipality will do is they'll put public projects on that land that is in harmony with nature. I'm going to show you in 1 second once we get through it, all right? So I go into detail with this. Again, when you read those handbooks, it explains a lot of this information already, right? So politics approach, understanding the concept of communalism, federation, a body politic, establish a municipal corporation, install a mayor and councilman, install your courts, install your public safety, intergovernmental contracts, install special districts, purchasing unimproved raw land by municipality. Then we go into the economics part, because you can't fund everything if you don't know how to work a basic, how do you engage economics for a black municipality so that way it can survive based on how those people operate as opposed to how the state runs it, how other places run it. As an indigenous people, we have a different way that we approach things from a community or a village standpoint, right? So in the black community today, the dollar only circulates 6 hours. 17 days in a white community, 20 days in the Jewish community, 30 days in the Asian community. We're not even going to the Indian community, which is around the same amount of time. 6 hours, we get a dollar, it goes out. You know why it goes out? Not from you leaving the community, but to the Arab down the street.
There you go.
You go right to him and say, hey, you go.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You go right into Macy's or whatever. But we have a way that we can keep big box retailers out of our community. We have a way that we can have a parallel currency that will aggregate more value than the actual fiat currency that's used by the local government. By the state or national government.
We're going to open up a beauty barber supply there, which is probably I do, but we recognize that they cornered the market for beauty barber supply as they are keeping Aborigines out. But we are spending, we are 90% of their customers.
Exactly.
Customer base.
Exactly. So here's how you influence that. I'm going to show you. So I go into this document that says Black Americans won't stop being poor unless banks stop discriminating. Banks give you predatory loans. They're designed to be inflated in a certain way that you can never afford to pay it off.
Like 50.
It's ridiculous. The bottom line is black people cannot operate with predatory loans. There's no way. This is why the black community is so messed up. When you go to communities, you see houses boarded up. That's based on predatory loans that are given by commercial banks. These banks do not work for our community, so we have to get them out. How do you get them out? You can't force them to leave if they're already there, but you can influence how the people see them.
So can we start our own bank in our community?
We're going to get into that. I'll show you. So once we realize that, hey, from the American Civil Liberties Union, they did a report that showed the disparities in the amount of wealth American households recovered after 2009 recession, with white-owned homes and assets recovering what? More fully than black-owned ones.
Wow.
Statistically speaking, it's because of the type of loans. Once you come in there, profiling. The banks have a method of profiling. If you're black, it's going to be a particular approach that they're going to take and how they give you certain options that they offer, products that they offer that they won't give to you if you was a white person. I mean, this is huge. And this is not just my opinion based on empirical data. There's unions that are doing independent research reports on this. So we can't use commercial banks. They are the depth of our community. This is why even if you start a black municipality like in Stonecrest and South Fulton, they're going to tank. South Fulton, we're going to get there. See, you're thinking.
Okay.
So black communities, if we have commercial banks and we have to take out the loans from those banks in order to get houses, there's no way we're going to survive. Because we've already operating from an impoverished state. Putting us in more debt is not going to fix anything. Number two, Black businesses, after 1 to 2 years, they tank. Why? Because they can't pay back the debt from the loans that they borrow from the banks. Because you don't make all of your revenue in the first 1 or 2 years. You need at least 5 years to start making good revenue. So we can't take predatory loans and think those loans are going to sustain us. So we have to have a different approach. But an approach that is a working model that is operating in other areas of society, but we just don't have it in our community because we're not being taught to implement it in your community. So here's how we work that. Community bank. Community banks, they're responsible for 60% of the business loans that are given out to the population. You know, most people didn't realize that. When a person starts a business, most people think, oh, you go to a Bank of America or you go to a Wells Fargo. No. Most successful, listen to this, successful small businesses go to community banks to get loans. They don't go to commercial banks. You know why? The interest is much lower.
Okay.
Number two, the type of loans that they give you are loans that you can pay out because the loans are formulated based on your business plan. If your business plan is only going to make X amount of money in 5 years, then the loan is catered to that 5-year plan. Then after the 5 years, now we're gonna start bringing in whatever it is that's needed. Not a regular loan that you get back from a bank now that after 1 or 2 years it includes all this interest and you can't pay it back because you can't afford to do it. The community banks, they create loans that's based on your business plan, not just a default method of how things operate. So what we want to do as a community bank, we want to get rid of loans altogether. There's no way that a black community can survive in the state that we're in with loans. We got to get rid of loans. But loans are given because the entity that gives you the loan makes money off of it, right?
Yeah.
But there's other ways that you can make money for giving or enabling the community to be autonomous as opposed to giving them a loan. I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to get into that. So the community bank is a commercial bank that derives funds from and lends to the community where it operates only. So their survival is based on how economically sound that community is. A commercial bank don't care about what community they come in. Their interest is not to them. Their interest to the stockholders in. But this community bank, if the community tanks, that bank is going under. That bank is going out of business. So why would they want to create loans that's going to put people in debt? And if the citizens in that community are not prosperous, the bank is going to go under too. Why would you want to set up a system like that?
Right.
You're not going to do that. Community banks can also be created by nonprofits. A nonprofit can start a community bank. People didn't know. Nobody really knows this, but look at this. Oh, okay. Here I get with the FDIC, because sometimes for some people it's like, well, I need an accredited entity to tell me that this is okay to do, because black people get really skeptical when you introduce them stuff, right?
Okay, yeah.
So I show the FDIC. The FDIC acknowledges the importance of community bank, and they encourage it. They encourage community bank, and they support it. And they had several conferences where they was trying to get black people from our communities involved, and nobody shows up. Nobody shows up because we don't even know this exists. We don't even know we have this option to do that. Yes,
you don't know.
That's what I'm saying. But they don't care. They're not responsible for getting you. They're just responsible for putting the offer out there. It's up to you whether you want to come or not.
That I didn't know that they were supporting community.
Look, they have a whole manual on this, bro. A whole manual. Nobody knows about this. But I looked into it and I said, you know what? This is good. But look at this. The resource on the community banking market, you can go back and download this on your own time and read through this. But they give you statistics. They give you the pros and cons of community banking, things that you can do on how to implement it. They go into everything. This is a resource book on how to do it and how it functions in the state of Georgia. Specifically, Community Development Bank. There's a bank called the First, It's called the First City Fund Corporation, and a not-for-profit created it in order to go to New Haven and create a community development bank, because they realized the commercial banks were putting the community at a disadvantage and their businesses were not thriving. People were losing their homes. So they said, listen, a not-for-profit said that. They sat back and said, yo, let's see if we can create a bank. We want to see if there's laws on the book to do it. And they found the laws to do it. They say, okay, they made their own bank. And now they're patronizing everybody in the community that support the bank as opposed to commercial banks, because when people take out loans from this bank, it's catered to their small business plan or their revenue income as a means of their mortgage note. So the loans are catered towards your lifestyle and not just something default that's passed down by the board of directors from a commercial bank.
So how do you get funds for a community bank? Like,
You raise them.
Raise them?
Non-for-profit raises funds through donations. How do non-for-profits exist? Through donations, right? That's how you set up your bank. If you have a particular amount, let's say you need $1 million, then you need to do fundraising for $1 million. You don't just stop in your community. You go outside your community and you show other communities, hey, we're doing a pilot program here in this community, and once it's successful, then we can implement it in your community. Support our endeavor to do so. So we're gonna get there. See, you're thinking. We're gonna get there. Look at this. So now we're thinking indigenously in a way that we are away from the predatory nature of all the commercial entities that seek to prey on our community. If 6 hours the dollar goes out, why would they not want to jump in our community and get a piece? Right? Why would Arabs and Chinese people not come into our community? Yo, every 6 hours they're giving their money out. And they spend billions of dollars every year. We have $1 billion of purchasing power in America, but it leaves our community in 6 hours. Yeah. Why would, banks are gonna jump in there, churches are gonna jump in there and get your money, right? Because they know you're gonna give it to us anyway, right? The liquor stores are gonna say, why? The Chinese store, the Arab store, because we know y'all just giving away money. Y'all can't keep nothing, but you're willing to give it away. So we're finding ways to go around that, right? So raising the capital to establish an own bank is the most difficult process because they were trying to find a way how to raise the funds, and after they figured out how to do it, now we take what worked. Because we ain't got to go through the teething process, and we just use what they did to work to raise it, and we can implement it in our community. So I'm going to show you how they did it. You can go on their website and everything like that, right? Oh, how to start a community bank plus a business plan. Non-for-profit or individual, if you want to start your own bank, you go on to Amazon, you order this, it walks you through all the steps on how to do it.
Wow.
$29.
$30. Nobody knows this exists. Nobody even cares about it. Nobody even knows this exists, right?
Yeah.
Community foundation. You said grants.
Grants.
What is the purpose of community foundation? Community foundations are instruments of civil society designed to what? Pool donations into a coordinated investment in what? Grant-making facility dedicated primarily to the social improvement of a given place. They are independent, registered philanthropic institutions serving geographically defined territory, typically a city or what? Administrative areas such as the county, region, and the like, which would be your municipality. The 6 main characteristics of a community foundation are act as what? Grant-making foundations, e.g. give grants to support what? Development projects. Their mission broadly defined, e.g. is to improve quality of life where? In the community. Serve geographically defined communities, right? Are supported by a broad range of private as well as public donors and seek philanthropic contributions primarily for the inside of the community and are governed by multi-sectoral local boards reflecting the community, and they build capital endowment, which is an important element of sustainability. In general, the community creates this, and the community creates this entity, or their job is to go through philanthropic endeavors anywhere in the world to raise donations, to create grants, to give it to small businesses, to give it to public community investment programs and development projects. That's all they do. All they do is get money. Did you know that Cobb County has one? Gwinnett County has one. The city of Atlanta has one. But black communities don't have these.
And our foundation offers us grants as teachers. We can apply for the grants.
All they do is make grants. That's all they do. Get money and make grants. That's it. That's all they do. So what you do is the community foundation gets into contract with a community bank. Community bank is an entity that needs money to sustain itself, but we're saying don't use loans. So they're like, well, how do we make money? The community foundation has a contract. The bank as an entity, they apply for the grant, they receive the grant, and what they do is that they keep a portion of the grant for themselves, and what they do is they put an application fee for anybody applying for the grant so they can stay in business. So they're getting money from the grant, which means that they have to ensure that community foundations have all the resources they need to continue to get these grants so these banks can survive. And when you apply for it, you pay an upfront fee, and that fee, along with the portion they take from the grant, is what's empowering the bank, so the bank does not have to give out loans.
So how do you get these grants? How does the foundation go out and get these grants?
Study them. Look, here's one of them right here, Community Foundation for Greater Land. Go study them. This is an excellent website. They tell you how they do it.
What's the website?
It's called Community. He got it on camera. It's Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. This one is a coalition of the Greater Atlanta communities that have a community foundation that's bringing in money to create grants. What happened? Oh yeah, before we leave. Okay, got you. So you go and you study entities that are already in existence that are doing these things. Cobb County and Gwinnett have one. Just go there. They have open board meetings with the community. Nobody shows up though, but they're there. And just ask them questions. Well, how do you guys do this? And what about this issue? And they explain all of that to you. But we don't do this because we don't know it exists. But a community foundation can remove the loans from the community, and all we do is give grants. Imagine a black community where all you do is give them grants. You don't give them loans for nothing. How do you think the businesses will thrive? How many people will keep their homes? And the foreclosure rate in the black community has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
But if you're giving them grants and not loans to build their houses, they ain't got to pay nothing back.
Man, that's what I'm talking about, man.
And all they do, all this foundation do is find ways to make money, to raise money.
How I was going to build the houses for the community, for the Aborigine that I was going to place there.
Create one of these. You can create a community foundation and just go and advocate for people to donate. And what you do in return, you do community work. So you go into a community and say, hey, we're trying to do a fundraiser for A, B, and C. Oh, you know what? We see you guys have, your highways a little dirty. So what we're going to do is we're going to help you guys clean up the highways in exchange for a donation to do so.
Like a bartering type
kind of thing, yeah. They do that, or what they do is they have certain programs, or they'll work with the homeless, but they get involved with the community to get other people on the outside to donate to the foundation so they can create a grant that goes right back to the community. So it's a self-sustaining system. And you don't need nothing outside the community. You don't need to go to the grant for the federal government to say, hey, we want some grants. No, we create our own grants. We don't need them. Get them out the process. Why do we need them? Because if we keep going to them, then we're at their beck and will. But if within the community we're able to raise our own funds to sustain their own projects and development things that we got going on, we don't need any other entity. And that's how you become Aboriginal or Indigenous, where you patronize your own and you get everything you need from your community without having to go outside the community. But you have to install these things and know how they work and how to support them so that everybody can get involved. Here's the last key. Community bank.
You have to be a non-profit, right?
No. Well, for what? The community bank?
Or the foundation?
Foundation, yeah. Well, foundation is a nonprofit. Right. They don't raise they are a non-for-profit whose sole purpose is to do philanthropic things in order to raise funding to create a grant to go back into the community that they're doing on behalf of. Their grants don't go you have to live in the community to get that grant.
So you have to have two different foundations, one for the bank and then one for the
Exactly, and then have a contract where both of them work together. But what happens is the municipality is the one that passes down the policies on how these things are supposed to work. You understand? Which means that it forces these entities to work together based on the political regime, and in order for that regime to survive, they need these entities to work together in order for the community to continue to be enhanced,
That's
right?
why you make a charter for your own municipality.
Exactly.
And have your own board members that have the same vision.
Exactly. But the board members can only come from the community. Nobody outside the community can sit on the board.
Right.
They're forced, like I was telling him, the body politic, everybody in the community has to vote or nothing will happen.
Right. And you can do your own school system and do your own curriculum for how you want it. And we can do Aboriginal curriculum in our schools that meet the needs of our children.
Why? Because you're setting up, based on the political system, is setting up a special district and putting their board of directors on that special district and say, hey, the policy is we want this type of curriculum because it reflects the people that live in this community. And you're allowed to do that. The state law allows you to have that degree of leeway, which is also done by people that homeschool. It's the same kind of system. But what happens is, a lot of times these communities open up the special districts and allow the state to vote people on their board. Now, you can't let the state do that, because if you let the state do that, their curriculum is not going to reflect the people that live there in that community. So we saw our Torah-centered community. If the state is electing people on a board who didn't pass on a curriculum, it's not going to reflect what we want. Yeah. But if we do it from within our own community and have the black municipalities set up the board and say to the board, listen, this is the curriculum that needs to be in place to reflect the people that live in the community statistically, because it'll increase their chances for opening their own businesses, to participate in society. This is what we want to have. So we'll let you guys operate autonomously, but this is the policy you have to follow.
But the community has to have at least 2,000 people.
Like I told him, it varies. That's not a general. I haven't looked at where you guys are at, but you can go back and look at the county you live in, and you can look online and say, well, how do I start a municipality in this county? And it'll tell you if it's a 2-mile radius, 5-mile radius, whatever can be allotted to you, the amount of people that need to be residents there, and the amount of registered voters. So like I was showing him, in one community, they had a little over 250 people. Yeah. They created a 2-mile radius municipality. 2 miles. 2-mile circle. Yeah. Now that's not that big, but think about it.
That's pretty big though. 260
people had to live there, but only 50 people who are registered voters had to vote. Had a petition, that's it.
That's lovely.
So that means we have a 1/5 of the people living there. Only 1/5 of those people had to sign that petition. That's it. And it had to be registered voters. Why? Because they don't want to be the ones responsible for voting everybody in. So you want to make sure you hold town hall meetings to get them involved, because they're not only helping to create the municipality, but they're also the ones who are going to be at the forefront to getting people installed in there. As a matter of fact, some of those voters themselves will be the ones that will probably run to sit on the board themselves, right? So the last thing is, And you can go into municipal bonds, and we want to get rid of municipal bonds altogether and just work with grants. Municipal bonds are not bad, but municipal bonds are designed to create revenue so that way the municipality can fund certain public projects, right? And the last thing I'm gonna get into to you with, the two last things, is this right here, community currency. So I made a post where I said predatory loans are given mostly to impoverished communities or communities that's at a disadvantage, which is mostly the black community. So how do you combat that? I showed you community banking and showed you how that operates. Community foundation, showed you how that operates. Now community currency. How do you increase the state and national revenue of a community, but don't even tap or have to tap in or touch that currency? So if we bring in $1 million in our community, how do we keep that $1 million there without touching it? But circulate currency in the community so that everyday operations can occur. Yeah. You create what's called community currency. Community currency is a parallel or local currency that runs alongside the state or national currency. And what this is that it's a line of credit program that's extended to only the adherents and residents of that state, of that community, which means that you're giving a line of credit to people that the people can use day to day for purchases, for anything, and they don't need to touch the dollar.
Let me ask you, if the American dollar crashes outside of the municipal...
It's not going to affect the community currency. That's a line of credit that's only valuable to that community.
Gotcha.
That means if the community is using community currency, you know who won't set up a store there? Best Buy or Walmart. You know why? Because if somebody comes in there with their community credit card and say, wait, you guys don't take this? Oh, I could go to a mom and pop store down the store and get what I need. I'm out of here.
Yeah, right.
That's not gonna affect their business. They're like, oh, they have a community currency here? Like, what the hell? They're gonna think twice about it, because once you establish, before they see, you establish this. So when they set up shop and they're like, now mind you, I'm on the board of directors, I have stock in a company. He said, wait, hold on. You're gonna build a Best Buy in this community where most of the daily operations is based on community currency that I can't take outside the community and spend on my yacht, on my car here? Nah, we don't want you building no Best Buy over there. Why are you gonna expense no? Nah, don't put no Walmart, no Best Buy there. We keep them out of our community and we patronize our own businesses. Also, community currency is you can give incentives for anybody in the community to get involved in the public works projects. So for example, if that road is messed up, how do you get the people to come and work on that road? You extend them a line of credit that then can be used by every business in that municipality because they have to be engaged in that program.
Oh, okay.
They have to be engaged in that program. So when you see that sticker, you know, oh, they support community currency. Well, we're going to go and patronize this business. And what happens is people get together, group of 20 people, they look at a road and say, man, you know what? I want a new house. What we're going to do is we're going to survey the entire municipality and find all the areas that need help. We're going to go as a group. And we're going to go and we're going to apply, we're going to petition for this area, get a permit. We're going to work on it so that way the municipality don't have to expense resources to do so. And after we do so and we complete it, we're going to have some administrator come survey and say, man, you guys did a great job. Here's $20,000 worth of community credit. That means they didn't take $1 bill from out our bank. It's still sitting there. All they did was extend credit to us. Now I can go and build my house.
Yeah. I love it, man.
I ain't gotta. And homeless people can do the same thing. They don't have to go and get a job. They can just fix the community. They know it anyway. They're everywhere. They can fix the community and get community credit, and they can build their own house. They can start their own business and do all the things like that. So now you're getting not just the youth involved, but homeless people in the community involved. They're gonna have no homeless people for what? You can just get up and go fix the road, apply for it, and they give it to you. Get $1,000 worth of credit. You can feed yourself for a whole 2 months. I mean, you don't have to touch a $1 bill. But if you want to leave out the community, you can. The community bank has a currency exchange community currency, and you can take out all the dollar bills that you want. What you'll find is that you'll have more value with the community currency than you have with the dollar bills, which means that it's going to inspire the people to stay in the community. Hey, if we see that we always leave in the community for, like you said, barber shop tools or whatever, let's make one in the community. You know why? Because the credit we have in the community, we have more value than taking that dollar and going outside the community and spending it somewhere else. This is make one here in the community. Who wants to do it? Yeah. Oh, Joe, you want to do it? You set it up, Joe. We got you.
Yeah.
So here's the last thing, and I'm done with this. I think my charge is
died.
The last thing is, remember I told you earlier the raw unimproved land? What you want to do is that you want to create ecologically sound structures on there that do not need infrastructure setup. You don't need to run no pipes. You don't need to run no electric lines or telecommunication lines. You don't need to do none of these things. The raw unimproved land is you want to create a self-sustainable housing or a self-sustainable commercial. That's yours, your car?
Like the Earthship.
Like the Earthship. And what these structures do is that they capture their own electricity, they capture their own water, and as a house, you have your own greenhouse area in there that you can feed yourself off of. Why is this important? The international community is encouraging every indigenous populations within an overall nation to implement these things as a means of them sustaining their communities, right? So when they own, so when they own the land as a municipality, what you want to do on that raw unimproved land that don't have an infrastructure on it, I think he did it. It's still going.
Tell him to push the bottom button.
What happened, man? Oh, yeah. All right, so so what you want to do is you want to take that land and now say to people, what we're going to do is create a community project that anybody that wants a home, not only can you go get a grant for it, but now the community gets community credit when they want to come by to help you build the home. So what you're doing is you're getting a grant, and then from the grant you have the community currency that's given to people. So we have a project in the community where if you want a new home, it's a community endeavor. We're not going to go outside and get a construction company. No, the community gets involved in building a home. And with the Earthshare Self-Sustaining Homes, a community of 10 people can build it within 60 days. You can build a 4 or 5 bedroom home within 60 days with just general working knowledge of just following the blueprint. So now you can get your family to help you build your own home. And you can build your home on a piece of land that don't need any kind of utilities running through it, which means you have less involvement of the state and the federal government. Why does the federal government get involved when you have your utility bills? You know why? Because the water pipes runs through states.
The
electric lines run through states. The telecommunication lines run through states. But if it's not running through a state, there's no federal tax. And if you're not running no lines and the houses or the structures can sustain themselves, you ain't got to get no utilities in that area.
I love it.
So that's how federal taxes are made?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
If you look on your bill, when you go home, what kind of utility bill you got? You got electric.
Georgia Power.
Go to Georgia Power, look on there, look at the federal tax. Why is it federal tax? Because that line runs through various states and they have to monitor or regulate that. So they have a regulatory fee, you'll see that on there as well. Regulatory fee and a federal state fees because those lines run through states and
it's
that
on your cell phone.
and there's a regulatory board, because it goes from state to state. It goes to a regulatory board that then needs to get funding so they can regulate to make sure everything's operating. And you'll see these costs go up and go up and go up. But if you don't have none of these things, and let's say we want to use cell phones in our community, right? You can create local towers just for that community. You know that you're allowed to lease towers.
I didn't know that.
NMVOs are entities such as U.S. Cellular. U.S. Cellular is not a real carrier. What they do is they lease the lines or the towers from AT&T, and they create
the lines to everybody.
They create their own phone network. We can do the same thing, but now we cut the middlemen out, and we go and say, hey, what's the nearest towers here? Let's say it's AT&T, T-Mobile. We say, okay, we're going to start our own NMVO and create our own phone service. So that way we don't need their regulatory board. We'll do everything ourselves because we have that in our own community. So that means anybody in the community, in order for your phone to work, you got to get the service that we run in this community. So now you get to centralize and control everything with things that are already working in society. It just now has been promoted or has not been presented to the black community. Which
is what they do up there because they have Windstream in the area up there where we are. Georgia Windstream is not anywhere else but.
And you can do solar power, you can do wind power, you can get your turbine and use that as a supplement for the solar power. I mean, it's different ways you can get power.
A lot of people getting locked up for turbine and wind power and stuff like
that. Mostly because they're doing it privately, but not as a government entity.
Gotcha.
Different from a private individual and a whole government. The whole government now, you can enact laws and say, hey, this is why we need it. And you put it in your charter. We need this in order to operate. Once they okay that charter, they can't go back and take that away. They allow you to install your turbines, your solar panels, and all of that. You got it right there. But if I want to go set one up in my house, I don't got what do I have to protect me to say why I'm doing this?
Yeah.
But if it's a government entity doing so and it reflects the community, this is why we need these turbines here in our community. This is why we need these solar panels here in our community. So every issue that the black community faces, we can fix with existing models that are operating either internationally or here in the U.S. We just don't know about it. It's just never promoted to our community. We don't have a clue it exists. But once you aggregate it and see all of these things and we put it all in one black community as pilot programs first to see how they run, and as we get success and we branch out, now we can influence other black communities. Atlanta's a black city. There's mostly black people here, but we don't run anything.
Remember we talk about, a lot of times people are making money because they're charging people to come get the training to know how to do this stuff. So as you're training people, then you can start that training program once you set up your pilot programs in a couple of areas, and then you can become the expert in there
And that's what we do. So this is a way we can control every aspect of our community. Getting our Wi-Fi, our own local television. We can do the same thing because we want the TV to reflect what's going on in the community. Because, today we have those public broadcast channels. We want those public broadcast channels to actually have actual programs for kids, for the adults that reflect things that are going on in the community, because that's how you control the mindset of the community. So that means that if I put, let's say I put DQ and have a D2 commercial on TV, you're going to be going looking for a DQ because you see what they're offering. But if only the people in that locality are only mom and pop stores, then that's the only things you're going to see on TV. So every day that's going to train people to go to these stores and support them. You're not going to see a Best Buy ad. You're not going to see a DQ ad. You're only going to see ads for businesses from our community. Programming that reflects our community. Whether it's cartoons for the kids, it's going to be about things that they can see immediately in our community and that they can immediately relate to, because that give them a sense of, wow, you know what? This is actually my community that I'm looking at. And when they go outside, they'll see things that relate to it. And like, wow, we have these birds in the community. It's nothing that's outside the community. We want to train everybody in the community to love where they're at and to invest where they're at. And public programming or TV actually reflects it. It influences what you do.
One last thing.
Okay.
The 4 principles that I saw you write weeks ago that most municipalities don't have. You said they have one category out of the 4.
Yeah.
And what were those 4 things again?
The same things you just went over.
I think
the municipality, and you had the community bank.
So the municipality, the economics, the housing, and I went into healthcare.
Right.
Because you want a local healthcare. Now, mind you, the UN has an international initiative for indigenous people that live on lands that have been colonized, and they have a way that they allow them to have their own healthcare plans. They don't have to engage in the state, the nation, nothing like. They can create their own healthcare plan. But black people don't know about this, so we waiting for Obamacare, waiting for welfare, when we can create our own healthcare plan. And get everybody in that community who does that type of, because we want to encourage people who have different trades to live in our community. You know what I'm saying? So we want to bring the best holistic doctors in there, the nutritionists in there. We don't want people that practice medicine. We want people that do alternative means of medicine. So that way, when they engage in this public program, that you can also pay. So if you short $100 and you can't pay your health care, I'm gonna go clean up that road. Let me go clean up that road right there. You go clean up the road, we'll give you community credit, you can go and pay your bill.
There you go.
So how does that community credit translate to the people who are actually providing the service? So
the credit goes to them, and they use the credit for either themselves personally or their business, however they have it set up, and they use that same credit to go buy something that they want.
So the doctors also get the community credit as well as they provide services to the people that come in.
Exactly.
Okay.
But they can now they can take as many healthcare providers as they want. But what they'll see is that in order for me to be successful in this community, I'm going to be a part of this healthcare provider that's in this community, that's part of this healthcare plan initiative. And if I am in this community, what I realize is that when I get community credit, I'll have more money than if I just encourage people to get these other healthcare providers. And after a while, if the community currency keeps going up, these other healthcare providers are not going to want to come in our community because they can't do nothing once you take this wealth outside the community. So that's what we want to encourage these people to stay in the community. We don't want you just to live there. This has to be your lifestyle. This has to be your worldview. This has to be something you do, you breathe, you teach your kids, and you don't plan to go nowhere else. But what you want to do is,
like the Amish community.
There you go. And once you set it up, the next thing is to inspire other people in other areas to set similar communities up. But you have to lay the groundwork first, and it's going to be a lot of teething pains and stuff like that. But once you use these models that are already working, so we're not talking about things that are theory.
So basically, we have to develop a curriculum sort of thing, or a operating procedure that we use, that you develop in the process of how you develop.
How do you set it up?
And then you'll be able to.
So everything that I showed you are things that are already working elsewhere. They're just not all aggregated in one black community. Matter of fact, we don't have half these things that's in there. I don't know any black communities that have any of these things in it, and that's bad. And we wonder why we're still in the condition we in. So that's what we have to do. We have to go and look for things that are working internationally or local, aggregated, run pilot programs as we take over the government, and then from there, make everything through policy from the government. So that means that nobody outside of the government can influence or change that policy, and the people that's placed on that board live in the community. It's not somebody coming from 3 or 4 miles away, but they have to be in that community in order for it to improve. So hopefully that helps.
That's it.
All right, cool.